right, we are live here on another Wholesale Wednesday. So we'll jump into this here in a minute. For those of you guys just joining, and for anybody watching on YouTube, just like the videos really helps us out. We'll be doing sourcing and brand direct outreach. We'll be talking a little bit about distributors, brands, different approaches, and we're going to start it off with how we always start our lives with, which is Smart Scout. So just to give a little bit of background to the people just joining, or if you haven't watched our lives before, we source using two primary sourcing methods. Number one is Smart Scout in order to streamline the reverse sourcing process. And number two is storefront stalking. So with Smart Scout, we are able to scour Amazon without actually having to go directly on Amazon until we find the product. We don't have to, we're not bombarded with products that sell exceptionally well or all sold by Amazon. And then from there, we're looking at other sellers' stores that we are looking to buy product or source product from their stores. So we will go ahead and jump right into Smart Scout.
Okay, yeah, we're live on everything else. So I was just double checking.
All right. Can you see my screen here, Brandon?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
All right. So our filter criteria with Smart Scout is very basic. And if you guys have watched this before on lives, you know exactly what we're doing. We're just setting a basic filter with a monthly revenue parameter here. What I think we should do for this live is just narrow down the maximum revenue a little bit, just to see if we can target smaller brands, for maybe a beginner that's just starting or doesn't have that much access to enough capital, right? So if we were to put this down to something like maybe 80,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we've been doing, 200, 250K, and those are big companies, but I mean, 100,000, this is monthly revenue you're talking about here. So 80 to 100,000 in monthly revenue is still huge. I mean, I would take, an 80 or 100,000 monthly revenue account all day long.
Yeah.
So just because it's a little smaller doesn't mean they're not real big accounts for your bottom line. So.
Right. And we're always looking for an average number of FBA sellers at least two. And that's because we don't want to look at any private label products. We don't want to look at products that only the brand is selling, oftentimes are private label, but we will look at something where maybe the brand is selling and there's another Amazon reseller or multiple Amazon resellers. We get into scenarios like this all the time. And then for obvious reasons, we'll look at above two offers just because, we need to be seeing that there are other FBA sellers on the listing. So we'll go ahead and click search here. And what this is going to do, it's going to populate a massive list of brands that we could then sort through. So that's all we're going to do here is we're just going to scroll through this list and we're going to look at the average number of sellers. We're going to look at the brand score. We're going to just gauge these different key metrics. And then once we find a given product listing that could potentially be of interest or might be an example lead that we reach out to, we're going to walk you through how we reach out. And as we're doing all of this, if you guys, of course, as always, have any questions on specifically what we're doing or any questions at all related to Amazon FBA, drop them down in the comments and we will answer them as they come in. Uline is on here, so
reminds me, gotta get another hand truck.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just scrolling and this is literally, how the process starts. So it's like first thing that caught my eye right here was this brand right here. It's a jobber drill bit in the subcategory and it's got $129 sell price. Amazon is on it, 50% of the time, but that's just one listing. And for me, The reason why that caught my eye is because I looked at this subcategory, and my thought process is that seems like sort of a niche category, right? Obviously, you have millions of dollars worth of product being sold there, but it's a niche of a niche, right? So, if we go ahead and click on it, just see what it's about. I'm running pretty slow today. All right, here we go. So you got Amazon on this one. It looks like Amazon is selling these products. So we're probably going to go ahead and bypass that. Back to Smart Scout. And Brandon, if you're seeing anything, stop me. So as we're doing this, right, Brandon, can you talk a little bit about the brand score? Because that's something that we look at from time to time. Still with us? Oh, you there?
Yep, there you go. I was just texting. I got disconnected. I didn't back. I heard what you said. So brand score. Yeah. So I mean, brand score is relating to it's the internal function of Smart Scout, and it just compiles a couple different things, but it really ties in nicely to what we look at as far as brand direct listing optimization, stuff like that. So brand score is just a cumulative number out of 10, and what that's doing is just based on the listing, based on the keywords, based on the offers, based on a bunch of different things that Smart Scout takes into account. It's just assigning it. So the closer it is to 1, the worse the brand is. And then the closer it is to 10, the better the brand presence is. That's another word you can use, brand presence, on Amazon. So yeah, that's definitely a big component for me, at least when I'm looking on Smart Scout, is I want to see what that brand looks like, because again, we're always looking for brand direct. We're looking for a difference between representation of the brand and how it's presented on Amazon versus the product, and we're trying to bridge that gap for these brand owners.
What was that? What was the difference? Can you say that again?
Yeah, definitely. So I always use, and I use this on the phone with brand owners as well, is the difference between the representation and the presentation of the brand versus the, sales of the product or the quality of the product. So if a product is selling well, but it's not being presented appropriately, you might have higher returns. You might have more issues relating to, you could not be capitalizing on all the sales of the market. So representation versus quality, basically. Also, while you're looking here for brands, we have in the comments saying, have you heard about Amazon cleaning up the catalog, suspending accounts for creating their own branded bundles or misbranding products? Yeah, I mean, I'm actually personally working on one of our accounts right now that is having that issue where they've basically, one of their sellers created a branded bundle and essentially hijacked the listing, created artificial exclusivity for themselves. Basically, that's why sellers do that a lot of the times. But there's always something, with we just went through that whole thing with generic products, generic product names, and strings of letters in the brand name. Everything is always changing with that stuff on Amazon. So I mean, the main piece of advice that I can give you and that we always go by is that just don't do anything against TOS. If you're doing something that's against terms of service, or you're just in general trying to be shady or try to take the easy way to do something, then it's probably going to catch up with you eventually if you do it enough. So never look over your shoulder at anything. But yes, I have heard about that. That's been a big thing with bundles, especially if it's something where the lower priced item is the name of the brand, which in that case, obviously against TOS in that regard. So yeah, it's definitely been a thing, as it always is with Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't want to be selling under, but things that have a bad brand name, because you're at risk with Amazon. It's also a value prop to a brand, right? They don't want their brand misbranded on Amazon, confuse customers. So I opened one up before as you were talking, but I just want to keep scrolling here, see if we can get one or two. Anything you're seeing catches your eye?
Just saw one. It's was that Wii gaming guitars, buddies. That's way down there. I was just thinking. I remember those like when we were growing up, where we play on the Wii. Are those still around?
What is that? Wii?
Yeah, that's like the. It was almost not that it was VR, but it was like the original. Like you remember, like Wii bowling and stuff like that. I feel like that was the original. Like you would throw shit into the TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Break the friggin' TV.
Yeah, I know.
Parents' TV.
That's what I mean. I remember playing that with friends like as a kid.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was still around.
Yeah. So I mean, it's literally just a matter of, continuing to scroll here, and it's like, all right, just not even clicking on this, which I'm probably just going to X out of it because the first main image is like pretty well optimized.
Yeah.
So you probably got an idea, like, yeah, this is not something we could.
Yeah, and might be something that we overlook as far as looking at this stuff. But if you guys are not using DS Quick View, that's how we're pulling up this information without clicking on the listing, like rank and things like that. So, excuse me, if you don't have DS Quick View, I would definitely suggest downloading it. It saves a lot of time.
Yep. Yeah. I'm running really slow today. I don't know what's going on. It's been doing this all day.
Really? Yeah, I mean, so I was definitely liking anything that's. I like a lot of health and household. I know we both kind of like that stuff. I mean, same thing with that $128 ASP. What is that? Horse vitamins, pet supplies. Pull that up, see if there's anything there. Grocery and gourmet. Yep, I was looking at that as well. What's this? Take a look at this one. I immediately kind of like it just based on. Yep. This is. I'm liking this one. Yeah, and so I mean, right off the rip, I mean, looking at something like this, before we even clicked on it, just from that main image, I could tell that I was a fan of it. Based on the fact that that picture was a little old school looking. I don't know if they've had updated packaging since then, but you can kind of tell if they haven't updated their packaging since the 90s or whatever, right? Like the rest of the listing is probably the same way. And we click on this and it's also got a fairly high ASP, which we do like. It's got a subscribe and save offer on it as well, which if you're not utilizing that, that's literally free money. Because even if you're not in the buy box, if you have the subscribe and save offer, they will automatically purchase from you if you're in stock. Fun fact. So.
Yep. And so one thing here, right, is what we're looking at when we look at a listing is beyond, just those other components which Brandon mentioned, like the imagery, the bullet points, the titles. is the other sellers that are selling on the product, because that's the second part of our sourcing process. And quite frankly, this has been the bulk of our sourcing over the years before Smart Scout even was released, which is storefront stocking, right? So we have not really much interest in sourcing this prairie horse supply. And the reason for that is because we don't really target our products that we carry in one industry over another. We're focused on, providing strategic value to brands on Amazon. And we're just focused on getting more products into our inventory. So it really doesn't matter what industry we're selling in. And, additionally, if we are sourcing an industry specific store, we're probably going to be met with more resistance from these suppliers wanting some sort of brick and mortar or industry ties. So we might target our search with, looking at a store, something like this. I haven't looked at it yet, but the name sounds like it might be something that's more general. So we'll go ahead and open that up in a new tab. Again, same sort of thing here.
And the listing too. I mean, that's the other thing, is looking at this individual, taking it back to the actual product now. It's not a industry specific, from what I could see, product that it's all industry specific sellers that are on there. There's some other sellers. So, I mean, just from the brand perspective of calling these guys, you're probably not going to be met with 100% like opposition of, hey, you guys aren't in the pet industry or, equestrian industry or whatever it is, which is good. It's a positive for sure.
Yeah, they definitely have a MAP policy of some kind, because the price really doesn't move. Somebody is running a display ad for another one of their products, which is interesting, but the listing is not well optimized at all. It's got one image. It's got like no information in the bullet points, so these are all areas that we know we can provide value. It's got no A+ brand content right down in the product description. It's just got, a bunch of sentences, which is fine, but we try to convey all of that into content to, make the customer shopping experience more interactive. All value props that we'll get into, on this call with brands. Just before we get into that, though, on the second part of our sourcing, I mean, this is where you really find the leads, right? Because you start now going deeper down the rabbit hole. And a lot of people, the deeper you go in the rabbit hole, the less competition you're going to have, because most people aren't spending the time doing that, right? And so we'll just start, here and open up a couple of these stores that we found from the original listing and, just do a quick sort of preliminary assessment of the store to see if they do in fact carry industry specific products, or if it's something that is, more of a company like ours where we're carrying an assortment of lines, right? And this particular store does look like they are in the pet industry, pet and animal health, it looks like. So, again, you sort of have to take a look at some of the products and make an assessment of if that's worth your time going through. But we tend to target our efforts in more general stores. So it's like, we'll look here, and reminder that we found this from an equestrian listing. They are selling a backpack, a holster, keys, right? And so they're kind of all over the place. So this might be an example, Brandon, I don't know if you agree or not with this, but this might be an example of a store that we might add to our list to just source from, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, there are commonalities, not in the product categories, but there's very likely commonalities between the products that are here. If this is a store that's mostly brand direct, if there's, qualities on the attributes of different products, like price, like different things. There's some stores that carry mostly high ASP stuff. There's, distributors, there's tons of different things. So you kind of, niche down into a particular type of store. I know, like when I'm looking at storefronts, some stores will be all one, all Procter and Gamble companies, and then some will be all brand direct. So, I mean, this looks like a store that fits our needs. And I'd be interested in looking at some of the stuff that they have.
Yeah, well. And these couple stores are just a start, right? You can then add these stores to your list. And mind you, we've went through the first page of the store. So so this store's got, 20 plus pages in it. So you have to keep going deeper. And then the whole point of this exercise is not just to, I mean, look at this product selling 20,000 units a month.
Yeah.
Like, you get an account like with this, it's I mean, it's a game changer for your business. But regardless of that, and just a quick tip for anybody watching is that if you open up a product inside of a storefront, the only offer that you're going to see in that buy box at the moment, and look, there's 155 sellers. The only offer you're going to see in that buy box is the one through which you sourced from that person's store, right? So in order to get rid of all of that, you just, you can just go up to the URL here and just get rid of everything up to the ASIN and then search for it again and it'll come up. But I mean, 150 sellers, it's like, what do you do in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know this product, but I mean, this seems like a retail arbitrage product from what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
wow, that is unbelievable. Two-digit rank. How's it do during the holidays? It seems like it
looks like it does worse. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, Brandon or I would probably go ahead and call this brand because we want to, we just, kind of like the challenge. But
yeah, and you also, I mean, it's in some cases we talk about this all the time, and I was on the phone with a brand last week, I think it was, where it was this same type of thing where you don't know if they are truly realizing all the sales on Amazon. So just because the product is, has 150 sellers on it and is selling X amount of units, you don't know if the brand is really getting paid that, right? So it's not, if they're not getting a one-to-one, they're losing out on money literally right out of their pocket. And so it's very possible that, you can convince them in that regard to say, hey, you're not making every dollar that you should be. So I don't know if you could do that on this listing. This seems like it's kind of crazy, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and we'll keep scrolling through here. There are a couple questions I think that came in, Brandon, if you want to grab those.
Yeah, I also want to grab some coffee. So got a question here. It says, what makes you think that there's likely a MAP policy, stable pricing on keep up? Yeah, exactly. So stable keep up pricing is pretty much exactly what we look for. And in some cases, you can see if there's MAP violations based on the fact that there's like a couple cents up and down, and then it goes back to a steady price overall. So yeah, and if all sellers are priced at the same amount, unless it's a case where it's just completely unprofitable and no one will go below that price, generally speaking, it's a MAP policy 9 out of 10 times. So yeah, just keep a pricing. There's nothing more complicated than that.
Yeah, and something like this, right? It's clear as day that they have MAP because the price really hasn't moved.
Yeah, right? And you can see, I mean, I see right around, there's a couple little dips in there that I'm looking at right now. But generally speaking, it's, yeah. And you can see that those are little small MAP violations just to get the buy box and they're going back to MAP. So.
Yep. So as you get deeper, right, and we already said that, hey, this store, was this the one we were looking at, or was it the other one? It was one of these, but where was it? I don't know. It was one of these, but we were acknowledging the fact that there are multiple pages to these storefronts, and when there's multiple pages, there are many, many products that you can go into and find, resellers that are selling those products. And then from there, click on their stores and find new stores. So in an Excel spreadsheet, an action you can do when you're exercising the sourcing is literally just accumulate a list of stores that you can source from, and then you can outsource it to VAs and have VAs go through those stores. But by accumulating this list of stores, not only are you going to have an arsenal of sourcing of different stores, but when you're looking at the stores, pay attention, right? Are they P&G companies? If they are, it's probably a pass. But if they're more niche, obscure type brands, that is the approach that we take. We focus on this niche type brand slash distributor model, right? And we're looking for those kind of a products that could be doing millions of dollars worth of sales a year, but they're small enough where we have access to, say, an owner or an executive decision maker or somebody that we can build a relationship with at that company and potentially even down the road convert it into an exclusive agreement, right?
Yeah, niche doesn't mean small sales, small company doesn't mean small sales. So sorry, I had to get my 7:30 p.m. coffee.
Yeah, and so it's like there's tons of opportunity just in scrolling through some of these stores. But when we look at something like this, right, I think, now is a good segue to transition it into the outreach, because you guys see how little bit of time, we're spending literally maybe 15 to 20 minutes going through and finding potential products, right? If you spent 2 hours, 3 hours doing this, you could accumulate a massive list of leads, right? So we're just sort of scratching the surface here and what we could potentially find.
Yeah, absolutely. And the strategy behind that is obviously you want to reach out all at once, and you want to develop the leads all at once. You don't want to just reach out to a company every time you find a lead. Get a list of 50, 100 companies, and just go from there.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if we look at this one, I'm already looking and seeing that, listing could definitely use some work. It's got a decent average selling price. They don't really have a map. There's an semblance of consistency in terms of the price, but there's no map. And then, they got 17 plus sellers. I mean, what do you think about this one? It doesn't look bad.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think that at that sell price and that velocity, it's not a bad move. Amazon's in and out of stock. I mean, it's could be where one of their distributors is selling to them or something. Because if they were selling direct, they'd probably be in stock way more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a listing like this, or a listing like, these are examples of brands that we would reach out to, right?
Yeah, I love this listing right here. I mean, right out. This is like, I don't know. I'm excited about this one. Pumped up about this one. So
yeah, that horse insulin is really getting to
really
you.
getting me going. Yeah.
Yeah. But so, okay, you're calling this brand. What are you saying?
By the way, I just gotta backtrack. This is a horse insulin. This is for diabetic horses. Oh, horse insulin resistant.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know half the products we sell.
Yeah, I don't either.
But it's like, it goes to show how category agnostic we are. Like, we literally focus on, making money off profitable products and adding value to brands. We understand Amazon, the ins and outs of it. So, that's where we provide the value. We're not a veterinary clinic that's going to, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's just not our business model. But okay, you like the listing, it meets your checklist, you're calling the brand. What are you saying?
Asking them what horse insulin is. I'm definitely going on the basis of, you want to arm yourself. And I mean, like when we get on the phone, we are prepared because we took 30 seconds, if that, and we looked at the listing to determine what's going on with it. And like, we've done this so many times that it only takes us a couple seconds to do. But in that amount of time, we're able to gather the things that we talked about and we explained on this call, which is that the pictures, the industry specific or non-specific sellers, so we know what their position is on that. The title, the bullet points, the A+ content, the lack of a store, the advertisement that someone's running for one of their other products, the sales velocity, the pricing. Does it have map? Does it not have map? Like, these are all things that we look at in the span of a couple of seconds. And so going into the conversation and being armed with that information, calling them, and again, as we always talk about, start and take the path of least resistance. I want to call, I want to say, hi, this is my company. We're from so-and-so. We stock and ship product. We'd like to open a wholesale account, ask for a price list, and don't overcomplicate it. And then once you're met with objection, if you're met with objection, then at that point, you've armed yourself with all these things, and then you can begin to offer things, provide value, ask calibrated questions, and just kind of feel them out on their tonality and everything there. So that's where I would start, and I would just kind of see how the conversation played out. But I think you have a lot of ammunition in this case because there's a lot wrong with this listing and the branding of the product.
Yeah. And that whole thing that Brandon mentioned earlier in the call, which was the discrepancy thing, right? You can appeal to their emotions because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, hey, you guys have an excellent line. You have 4.5 stars. The customers love it on Amazon, but it's not being showcased as it should be. Here's what you could be doing, right? Because we're on this in one side of the coin, we're saying, hey, your crap sucks, right? But
yeah,
we're also building them up, and you don't want it to sound like you're just knocking their products. It is a good product because it does have good ratings, but if it could just be armed with the right information on Amazon, and really you're tapping into Amazon's algorithm, not only are you going to increase sales on the product, which is going to help them, but you're also going to showcase that brand better. Customers are going to be able to interact with it more. It's going to solve issues preemptively for customers. Again, so these are all buzz things that we're saying on the phone.
Right. In some cases too, one thing I like to do is I utilize, yes, you have 4.5 stars on this listing. This is what people are excited about. But then we go into, and obviously you have to look and figure out what's what, but going into the bad reviews or the negative things on the listing, and I know you do this too, and then you tie those directly to things that we could improve and we could do to help out their brand and their listings. We haven't done that one of these lives. I want to see if there's kind of anything there. This is 4.5 stars, so there's probably a lot of good stuff, but is there anything in these that we might be able to use on the phone as, a value prop as far as the ratings and the reviews? Take a look at that. Let's take a look at those 1 stars and, the not so great stuff.
It looks like their stuff is pretty good with reviews.
Yeah, you can click on the ratings up top, I believe, and it'll go right to it. If you scroll up there and click on the 1 star, down. There you go. Keep going. A little more. A little more. Where the ratings are, and then click on under customer reviews. Yep. I believe it'll filter it to those.
You're setting ourselves up for this one. It's like these are actually things that we do on listings. We will, and again, this listing, I don't know how, it's a small percentage of customers that are leaving poor reviews, right?
Yeah.
They got a review in 2001. I don't know how much, value there is to add there, but it's like, I would focus on this listing personally. I'd focus on the fact that they do have a strong traction on Amazon with reviews and demand, but their listings are underperforming. They have none of those components. And just to, again, maybe somebody's watching this and they don't know what the components are of a listing.
Yeah. I was trying to read that review just now, that bottom one. It said it gave my horse a gas colic or something. What is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a veterinarian expert, so
You just pitch them on, tell them that their product killed some person's horse. It's a value prop. Yeah, I mean, just in general, it's all conceptual, right? Like it is something like Brad said that we do where we will look at these different components, and the reviews are one of them on this product. It looks like it's pretty good. So that's okay though, because you don't need to use that. You have all these other things that are, you've got. But if that is, and it works in your favor in terms of, you know, value propositions for the brand, then it might be something that we utilize. If it doesn't work in your favor, then you can just skip over it, right? Because at the end of the day, you're the one that's providing the value and showcasing the things that you want to be showcased to help the brand. So, if it doesn't work in your favor for what you're doing, maybe don't say it. So.
yeah. And the other thing is, right, so somebody's just starting this, somebody's just doing it, and I'm gonna jump out of the screen share here for a second, but somebody's just starting reaching out to brands, reaching out to whomever, right? You find this product, this horse product, and you're met with resistance, right? They say, no, we're not interested in working. You gauge the level of resistance, and if it's somewhere in the middle, right? If it's like, we're not so much interested, then that's something that we're going to pursue, right? Because there is opportunity there with doing that, because we know we can sway them, or we have a good idea if we can sway them, one way or another, and ultimately arrive at our solution, right? However, if you're just starting, that could be difficult, right? You do have to have a knowledge of these different value props on Amazon, which are easy to learn, right? Nobody's saying you have to be an expert in them. But another path of least resistance is simply asking them for an authorized distributor list, right? If they are unwilling to allow you to purchase directly from them, and many brands are, right? Just for the fact that you are an online retailer, but they don't care if you sell on Amazon, say, all right, well, do you have a list of distributors, authorized distributors, right? That's not, some random wholesaler selling these horse things out of his garage, right? It's an authorized distributor that you get a valid invoice that you could submit to Amazon if you need to later on. And so with that, then you could potentially purchase product through that distributor, build a relationship, because we've done this before many times. You build a relationship with that distributor, and ultimately down the road, it could manifest itself into a brand direct relationship. Why? Because you've proved yourself with the distributor. You've proved that you are committing, you're stocking product, you're buying product on a consistent basis, and they can vouch for you. And they're almost acting like a middleman or a liaison between you and the brand, because you're going to this brand, you don't have any working relationship whatsoever with them. But now you establish a year's worth of business with the distributor, and then maybe after a year, it makes sense for you to buy direct because you're doing good volume with the distributor.
Yeah, and these are small to mid-sized distributors as well. This isn't, UNFI size distributors. These are the smaller guys that we could have that same intimate relationship with as we would with the brands. And we actually have a couple of questions in here that I just want to get to real quick. And it says, first one says, how do you shortlist items from suppliers? Do you guys use tools or manually search feed files? So I will tell you the short, simple answer is we use Seller Central. We upload the products before we're purchasing them. If it's a first-time product, to make sure that we're able to list them, everything goes smoothly in that regard. And then we're just sending it in through Amazon workflow. It's really, that's it. I mean, that's all we do. We're not really uploading files or anything for inventory. I mean, because it's generally speaking on it.
He might be talking about price lists.
Price lists?
You're referencing. I don't know. Maybe he's not, but maybe if Kanan, if you could specify that there in the comments. But if it's uploading to Seller Central, exactly what Brandon said, if it's a price list, right, you got to assess how large that price list is. If it's a list of thousands of SKUs, use something like a scraper that's going to go through. I think, it's like Scan Unlimited. Is that that's one of them that, from time to time we'll use. But again, we're not dealing with those massive distributors so oftentimes, even if we are working with a small to mid-sized brand, maybe there's a couple hundred SKUs, right? And it's something manageable that one of our employees can go through. So that's pretty much how we're going through that, unless you want to specify something that we're missing here.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next question, well, forget an answer on that. Good profit margin, good ROI, and good dollar profit. Do you want to answer that, or you want me to? Do you want?
I mean, either way, I mean, I think it's case by case. We like that answer, case by case, but at the end of the day, it is. And the reason for that is because ROI is relative to how much capital you have access to.
Right.
If I put $1 in and I make $1, that's 100% ROI. I'm more than happy with that. If I put $10 in and I make $1, it's only 10%. Well, for a 9-figure Amazon business, maybe 10% ROI makes sense because they have access to massive amounts of capital. But for a brand new Amazon seller, you're going to want to set a threshold, right? And generally say what we say, if you have limited capital, if you are a new seller, that threshold is usually about the 20% mark, for a new seller. We'll look at 15%. We'll even look at a little bit lower than 15% in the case of the product being very high volume, where we can make it up in volume and turn our cash quicker, or it's a very high dollar figure in profit. So, right, there's this, you're assessing the relationship between return on investment, how quickly the product is moving, and how high that dollar figure is in terms of profit payout per unit.
Yeah.
Right. But as a brand new Amazon seller, we've always said, like, stick to that 25, 30% ROI. When you have limited capital, $3 profit minimum. As you scale, you can look to reduce that ROI and reduce the profit down a little bit as volume goes
Sure.
up.
Exactly. Yeah. As you scale, I mean, the numbers change. And I always say, like, you can't pay bills in margin or ROI, you pay bills in dollars, right? Like, that's something I say all the time, and because it's true. And, I like to see let's say we're making a 60% ROI, but we're making 35 cents on the product. It's still something that I kind of steer away from, just because the margin for error is really thin at that point. If any one thing changes, you go from making 60% return to nothing, right? And so I like to be playing with $2 and above, usually profit wise, is what I like, because it gives a little bit more room for error. But exactly like you said, as you scale and different things, your numbers and your thresholds change. The other element of it that I think is you have to use it as an opportunity cost to say, do I have the ability to invest in other products instead of this one that are going to net me more in dollars? So if the ROI and the margins are a little different, but your net in dollars is more, what are you going to go for? So I think that's an element of it as well that, it's not really talked about as much.
Yeah, and going off that, I remember how I felt in the beginning, which was that, like, you want to get your hand right when you have no inventory, you just want to get your hands on the profitable product. So it's almost like sometimes you're willing to stretch things just to make them work, but you always want to look at the data, and really have data be the driving decision behind everything. Because don't just buy a product, because I've seen new sellers do this all the time, where you're buying a product or you're making an investment just because it's your first one, and you want to really get in there. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking just to learn the process, right? Because a lot of times you're doing retail arbitrage or online arbitrage, and you're not making a ton of money on the products, but you're just learning the logistics process. Fine, nothing wrong with that. But with wholesale, you're going to start making larger purchases, maybe $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. And so, that if you make bad buys like that over, repeatedly, you can lose your money very quickly. So we use data, specifically Keepa, to drive down our level of risk, and then make a test order, right? We always place test orders to mitigate that risk.
I was going to say that's exactly what that test order is for anyway. I mean, you're basically doing the same thing as if, when I was doing RA a lot, and I don't know if you were doing this when you were doing RA, but I would go in, I'd buy a couple of units, and then I'd come back and I'd buy a ton of them if they sold, maybe list them merchant fulfilled or whatever, right? So in wholesale, you have that same thing where you're able to basically place test orders with most of these companies for a couple of units to mitigate the risk. And then as you grow, your risk tolerance grows, where, maybe the first order you're placing with a company, if it's a seasonal order or whatever it is, might be, a larger order. But it's only after, like you said, you understand and that data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And so, and another thing that I was thinking about was just going off of this whole concept as a new seller, placing the test orders or wanting to get your hands on profitable inventory, right? Always, like, advanced sellers, 7-figure sellers, we are always scrutinizing something, right? A lot of times new sellers will look at, like, they'll see, oh, this is like super profitable, really high margin, really high sales volume. And so there's a red flag somewhere, right? And they might miss it. But when you're advanced and as you gain that experience, your mindset is the complete opposite, right? You're looking at that super high margin, super high volume, and you're like, all right, this is not right. I need to
Something's wrong.
validate this.
Well, what we looked at today, with where you actually had corrected me, where I missed it, or I chose to ignore it, right, is when there was the product we were looking at, it looked good through Q4. And then there was on Keepa, there was a variation split where it lost a bunch of reviews. And so it may have been selling well before that, but now coming into this season, it probably wasn't going to do as well. And, took it off the PO because of that. But that's something that is very granular. But I think as you grow and learn over time, you start to pick up on all these things, because there's a lot of elements that go into doing this. It's not just like buy low and sell high. There's a lot of other factors.
Yeah, Keepa is your best friend. From every component to looking at the buy box, the price, the variations, the sellers on the listing, the volume, the seasonality. Learn Keepa. Like, if you could be a 11 out of 10 Keepa chart reader, you're going to be a 7-figure Amazon seller. Like, there is a direct correlation between reading Keepa and someone's ability and knowledge of reading Keepa with how big their business is, right? It's just like, It should be your Bible. It should be, everything you base your decisions off of, and then obviously following that up with a test order. So we'll bring it back for a minute here, because we kind of went on. If any of you guys have any other questions, drop them into the comments section. But generally speaking, like, this is what our process looks like for sourcing and outreach. Is literally, we're on Smart Scout, or we have VAs on Smart Scout, and we're scouring through there, and we're looking for these niche brands, and then we're really digging deeper into the storefronts, right, to find stores with products that have niche products, and then going in those sellers' stores, right? So that rabbit hole never ends. You could hire a couple of VAs to do that, train them on it. And we always say, you got to know the process first yourself before you outsource it, right? Because then if the VA has a question, they got to come back to you and ask you the question, right? And then from there, as Brandon explained before, is our outreach process, which is the path of least resistance. Very, very simple 3-part sequence, right? Introduce yourself, name of the company, what you do. You're an e-commerce company. Path of least resistance, which is probably, we want to open a wholesale account. And then based on that, based on the level of resistance that you're met with, from there, you determine if it's something that you can sway them. And you do that by unpacking and learning information through calibrated questions. And the easiest way to do that is just ask them why. Why? Do you mind if I ask the reason why you're not working with e-commerce or Amazon? It's so simple, and a lot of times they'll answer it, and then you can keep unpacking from there.
Yeah, and a lot of things, you can tell so much through tonality of when someone's speaking. And so we always say, a no might not mean a no depending on how it's said. An answer might not be the true answer depending on how it's said. A lot of things require you to kind of get to the bottom of it. And a lot of the way that we do that is by understanding tonality. And that's all sales. And that's stuff that you learn over time when you're speaking to someone, because things can be said differently, even if the words coming out of their mouth are the same exact thing. it can have a very different meaning or connotation. So we often know when we're talking to these brands on the phone, when they say something, if it's something that we should continue to pursue, or if we should, let it breathe for a little bit, for lack of a better term, and hold off for a little while and then revisit the conversation at another point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could hear your audio, but your video's frozen now.
Okay.
If you guys don't have any other questions or last minute questions, drop them. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and drop them down in the comments section. Always happy to answer those questions. And if you're watching on YouTube, as always, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps out the channel, helps us continue to make videos and put out value for you guys. Follow us on socials, Instagram. We're tweeting all day on Twitter.
Yeah, I've actually got one last question in here that through Instagram.
All right, Brandon's gone. So we'll get to that question at a later point. He'll answer it somewhere along the lines, and we'll talk about it next time. But if you guys are watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Really helps us out. And thanks so much. We'll see you next time.